Yes, sweetheart, and because it affected our capacity for objectivity, I believe that contributed to our demise. It made it difficult for us to get along with each other. With his unambiguous declaration that Don Felder would never return and that there is nothing to forgive, Don Henley has eliminated any doubt. The animosity between them has not lessened more than 20 years after their last joint venture. Henley maintains that it cannot be undone. One of the most renowned acts in rock history was created by them both. However, a number of disputes involving betrayal, money, and power were going on behind the scenes. Henley has made his final decision at the age of 77, and his remarks have many people wondering about the full context of the Eagles' success. Don Henley has never shied away from praising the Eagles' control and discipline. He told the news magazine, "I have no reason to forgive Don Felder," in reference to the Sphere Las Vegas show. The declaration confirmed what many had long suspected, that the two former Eagles had a shattered relationship. Henley thinks Felder betrayed trust by prioritizing his personal interests over those of the group's. After he betrayed trust, Felder made no effort to rebuild it. It was over once trust was broken, he stated. The original Eagles, and those who joined later, were clearly separated inside the organization. Henley and Glenn Frey continued to have almost complete control over the band's image, finances, and artistic direction. Henley took Felder's complaint about the unequal profit sharing as a challenge to his leadership rather than a legitimate grievance. Henley adamantly resisted any attempts to get back together with Felder, according to a source close to the Eagles' management staff. Even after Felder's 2001 replacement, Stuart Smith, pulled out of the 2024-2025 tour for health reasons. Felder, however, was never seen as a feasible alternative because to the needed lineup change. It would be an unacceptable step backward to bring Felder back, Henley remarked. Henley criticized Felder's memoir, Heaven and Hell, as verbally betraying him in addition to the dispute over profit sharing. Felder characterizes Henley and Frey as the gods in the book, controlling everything and denying anyone else a safe. Henley stated plainly in an interview with Rolling Stone, "When someone uses an inside story to further their own career, it's not only disrespectful, it's malicious." Despite Felder's lawsuit against the Eagles ending in 2007, Henley does not believe that this is acceptable behavior. According to a tour official, Henley firmly prohibits team members from bringing up Felder's name during logistics meetings. This is a long-term policy intended to safeguard the current operational framework, not a hasty decision. Henley and Felder can still grin at each other, but it doesn't imply the problem is over. Felder previously stated on a radio program, in contrast, Henley saw Felder's actions as phony and self-serving. Henley, who co-wrote the classic hit Hotel California, underlined that trivialities cannot undo the actual harm done by previous deeds. "I never saw that as a reason to keep Felder in the current band," Henley maintains. In an interview, Henley stated that a band must be managed like a genius corporation. The ship will eventually crash into the rocks if everyone tries to steer. For the first time, Henley affirmed that his position had not changed after years of inaction or evasive answers. He had no desire, no plan, and no circumstances that would cause him to reconsider Felder. Henley stated resolutely, "I choose to work with people I can trust, and Felder is not one of them." Henley will continue to play with the Eagles in future performances with his reliable partners. Don Felder hasn't played on that roster since 2001 and won't get the chance to do so again. Hotel California cracks. The conflict between Don Felder and Don Henley did not start with a single incident. Rather, it was the result of several arguments that grew during their tenure with the Eagles. Working on the popular Hotel California was one of the first triggers. Felder contributed to the song's distinctive rock sound by writing the music. However, Felder was not selected as the main vocalist despite his writing. Henley and his production crew made this decision without seeking his input. Additionally, Felder offered to perform Victim of Love, which is featured on Hotel California, but was abruptly removed from the recording session. Felder did not finish the song, and Henley recorded the lead vocals without warning. Felder felt belittled and mistreated as a result. He viewed that as evidence that his voice in the group wasn't really valued, even if he didn't say it aloud at the time. As Henley and Glenn Frey assumed complete control over everything, including musical direction and performance time, dissatisfaction increased. In particular, Felder's position was progressively diminished on later albums. He continued to play guitar solos, but Henley and Frey made all of the big decisions. Joe Walsh, another member with a more autonomous creative mind, was someone Felder tried to work more closely with. Internally, however, that endeavor had little impact. Refusing to alter the band's operational framework, Henley and Frey stayed at its core. Felder was frequently on the defensive because Henley controlled the song choices and production meetings. The band's dynamic grew more tight, particularly in the lead-up to performances, but while sharing a platform, the members hardly spoke to one another after work. Felder remained close with the other members, including Walsh and Bernie Lee Dawn, but started to turn away from Henley and Frey. However, his standing in the group was not much altered by those connections. Felder wanted to alter the band's organizational structure because he felt more like a doer than a decision-maker. According to colleagues, Felder was clearly irritated during his late 1970s tour and stated that he wanted the ensemble to function more equitably. Despite this, Henley was emphatic that the Eagles should be managed by individuals with strategic vision and managerial skills, a viewpoint that solidified his and Frey's positions as leaders. Felder gradually came to the realization that his contribution to the Eagles' signature sound would never be acknowledged as an equal. During performances, quiet disputes escalated into open altercations. Though it was never stated clearly, it was generally accepted that Henley and Frey received the majority of the revenues. However, group morale was low during the Eagles' height of popularity. Felder was frequently excluded from meetings pertaining to creative direction and was only notified of choices after they were made. Unlike in the early days, he was mostly involved in technical aspects of recording and performing sessions. The members' differences became evident, but there were no significant public disputes at this time. Henley saw it as a means of preserving group cohesion, whereas Felder felt marginalized. Although they continued to work together out of obligation, the collaborative spirit had vanished. These incidents set the stage for a protracted conflict. He felt like he was being left out of the group's core, was not included in recordings, and was not given any say in development tactics. Felder lost faith as a result of everything. In Henley's long-term plans for the Eagle, Felder's responses, in turn, were interpreted by Henley as evidence of irreconcilable disagreements. Rebellion, reunion. After a multi-year break, the Eagles made an unexpected return in 1994. The Hell Freezes Over tour, which drew millions of fans and generated enormous profits, saw Don Henley, Don Felder, and the other musicians reunite on stage. However, this reunion did not signify a genuine reconciliation among the band members. Henley and Glenn Frey had made it clear from the start of the tour that the members would split the revenues. Felder, Joe Walsh, and Timothy B. Schmidt would split the remaining funds equally, with the two leaders keeping 60% of the total revenue. Felder was unhappy with this significant discrepancy since he believed that given the Eagles' standing and market worth, his contribution should have received a bigger portion. However, Felder chose to stick with the reunion endeavor, much to his chagrin. Because of his contract and the financial strain from his undesirable personal activities, he consented to keep performing. However, this arrangement was short-lived. Felder and Henley's arguments soon came up again throughout the planning and execution of the tour. Every night's schedule, song order, set length, and show material were all still completely in Henley's authority. Felder's opinions were frequently disregarded, with Felder assigned specific jobs and Henley and Frey making all the choices. It was a model that was very similar to the previous one. The environment at work grew hostile and oppressive. Felder stated over and over that he would not be able to stay for very long if he was not involved in the orientation process. Henley was adamant that the Eagle structure would remain the same and that anyone who didn't agree could go. Felder kept bringing up the issue of money in addition to the struggle for authority. He requested a review of revenue and expenses, as well as more open data regarding tour and reissue revenues. When this request was turned down, Henley saw it as a challenge to his authority and a provocation. When the Eagles issued the box set of chosen works from 1972 to 1999, the dispute intensified. Felder wanted an examination of the entire project and took issue with the way royalties were distributed. The disputes were discussed in public for the first time since the reunion, ending the period of silence. A tour manager at the time claims that Henley became impatient with Felder's suggestions because he thought Felder was attempting to replicate the power struggle of the late 1970s. Henley made a firm decision to cut off any communication with Felder. Felder received notice of his termination at the beginning of 2001. His attorney just called to discuss this. No direct conversation took place. Felder hasn't participated in any Eagle-related activity since. Instead of serving as a time for reconciliation, the reunion period ended up serving as the catalyst for a second fight. The problems of internal voice, finances, and authority all reappeared unaltered. While Felder longed for a more open, equitable system, Henley continued to operate in the same manner. The reunion was a prelude to more serious hostilities because of disagreements and frustration on both sides. Felder, in Henley's opinion, was a troublemaker who broke the harmony required for achievement. He made the decision once more to remove the component that was deemed incompatible with the group's development direction, accusation of termination, and strategic silence. In 2001, shortly after being let go by the Eagles, in response, Don Felder sued Glenn Frey and Don Henley, claiming that the dismissal was unjustified, illegal, and motivated by personal benefit. Felder requested up to $50 million in damages in the case, which included monetary losses and missed advantages associated with the band's operations. Not content to watch Henley and Frey do nothing, they countersued Felder, claiming that he had broken the terms of the contract, leaked confidential information, and harmed the Eagles brand. 6 years passed during the protracted legal battle, which garnered a lot of public attention. The severity of the friction between them is evident from documents and lawsuits, even though neither side has disclosed the specifics. Felder's approval of Henley's memoir, Heaven and Hell, My Life in the Eagles, which critically characterized his relationship with Henley and Frey, was one of the factors contributing to Henley's ire. Felder asserted that despite being an official performing member, he was treated like a hired hand and kept out of crucial decision-making processes. Henley is also characterized in the book as being aloof, cunning, and in charge of all group operations, including music and money. Felder believed that this atmosphere was unhealthy and challenging to work in over time. Henley refrained from directly responding to the article when it was published in 2008. Although he did not bring up Felder in any interviews. A source close to the Eagles documentary's production team said that Henley asked that no fresh interviews with Felder be utilized. Henley Frey's wish to erase Felder from the band's history is evident in the fact that his tale would only be portrayed from the perspectives of the other members. Felder lost his position with the Eagles as a result of the 2007 out-of-court settlement of the lawsuit. According to insiders, the agreement stipulated that Felder would not participate in any upcoming Eagles tours or initiatives. Even though the settlement sum was not made public, Don Felder began a solo career with several distinct musical endeavors in the years after leaving the Eagles. Fans had the opportunity to get a closer look at his unique style and talent as he proceeded to release new albums and perform solo on a variety of platforms. Even though Felder had a devoted following and attained some degree of success, he was still unable to replicate the impact and broad appeal of his tenure as a member of the Eagles, the iconic band that left its stamp on world rock history. Although Felder has had a consistent and unrelenting solo career, he has never attained the same level of success that the band did in terms of sales. His solo tours have frequently drawn smaller audiences, and his individual songs and albums have not gotten the same degree of notice as the Eagles' hits. This has served to emphasize the widening divide between Felder and his old band in terms of dedication, status in the rock world, and level of experience. The Eagles' continued dominance in the music industry with their current roster and their lack of indication that they will consider Felder again have only served to further solidify this isolation. Notable has failed to resolve the long-standing conflict between Felder and the band, despite Felder's consistent solo success. This illustrates the unbridgeable divide between the band's illustrious history and present. Henley kept a low profile, refusing to address the prior relationship in public, not bringing up the case, and not disputing the information in Felder's book. His behavior made it very evident that he intended to maintain a distance from Felder and to keep him out of any activity involving the Eagles' name. There have been no verified private or public meetings between Henley and Felder since the 2007 settlement. Felder stated on the radio that although they might have friendly interactions, none of them have progressed above politeness. Henley interprets the silence as a confirmation that what has happened cannot be reversed, rather than a lack of things to say. Predictions that Henley would change his attitude toward Felder did not come to pass. Even after Glenn Frey's death in 2016, Felder stayed totally out of the Eagles' operations, and Henley led the squad with the remaining players without altering the roster. Firings, lawsuits, public humiliation, and a total breakdown of communication were the culmination of decades of strain that led to their quarrel, which was not only an internal issue. There was no conversation to repair the relationship, no apologies. Felder had gone too far, and there was no turning back in Henley's opinion. The wall doesn't fall down. Don Henley and Don Felder continued to follow their own ways, each chasing their own rhythm of life and work, without ever coming into contact with one another more than 20 years after their final on-stage performance together. Even in his 70s, Don Henley is the Eagles' mainstay. He presently leads the group through a run of performances at the Sphere in Las Vegas, where the Eagles combine state-of-the-art stage technology with their musical heritage. Henley continues to be the lead vocalist for classic ballads like Hotel California and Desperado while performing live, acting as the narrative link that binds the audience to the band's over 50-year history. Off-stage, he manages all production duties and is regarded as the Eagles' captain, making sure everything runs well. Although Henley leads a reclusive life and rarely discusses his personal affairs, he regularly participates in charitable and environmental projects that he has long supported. Don Felder, on the other hand, has opted for a more relaxed lifestyle that is centered on working alone. His guitar solos recall fans of his heyday, and he frequently performs at private stages and classic rock festivals while touring at medium-sized and smaller venues. Felder is well known for his ability to connect with audiences and his unwavering love of music, even though he no longer enjoys the limelight of big venues as he did with the Eagles. In addition to performing, he spends a lot of time with his family and the community, preserving the reputation of an artist who is personable and kind. Two distinct routes, two lifestyles, but a common reality. Felder and Henley have both settled into a groove of their own. They don't disparage, discuss, or try to make amends with one another. Henley views keeping quiet as a calculated move to preserve the Eagles' cohesiveness. Felder views his decision to continue creating music without reflecting on the past as an act of acceptance. Audiences continue to witness Henley's brilliance on the Eagles stage today. They no longer travel the same path, even if Felder continues to thrive in the spotlight of his solo performances. Each keeps crafting their own musical narrative in their own special style. Maybe none of them wants to pull down the wall between them, thus it will never be taken down. Please remember to like and support our channel if you think this story is worth considering. To ensure that you don't miss the upcoming information about the little-known, obscure regions of the music industry, share this video with Eagle enthusiasts and subscribe to our channel. Please write a comment below in particular. After everything that Henley and Felder have been through, how do you feel about their relationship? Your thoughts would be greatly appreciated.